Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. As you can probably tell by the title of this video, this is going to be a slightly different vlog to the usual. I have been in a more positive mindset as of recent, and I feel like I am able to chat about this kind of topic that is a big part of my life right now without setting myself off again. One big thing, I did write out notes for this just so I won't lose my place, as my brain is a big mess and you'll probably find that there's a lot of ramblings throughout the whole thing. So if you see me sort of reading on the screen, it's because I've got points that I wanted to cover throughout the whole thing. I wanted to make this video because the winter months are setting in, and especially for the people I know back in the UK, where it does get significantly darker than what I imagine it does here. The darkness does play a lot on mental health problems, especially depression. That's the whole reason why we have so many holidays generically throughout this kind of time of year, is so that our brains have something else to brighten up the dark days, as so to say. Now, let me just be clear, I am not a medical professional in any means, apart from a first aid course way back in the day. If anyone associates with anything that I'm about to say or ramble on about in this video, I understand completely. But please reach out to friends, families, medical professionals if you feel comfortable enough to do so. Or even write it out in the comments below if you just want someone to hear you, as I know a lot of people struggle to feel like they can be understood. Just do not go through it alone. It doesn't make you weaker to ask for the help or seek help. If anything, it makes you stronger as you're making the steps to help yourself out in the long run. We hear people use the term depression a lot recently, and while a lot of people may be diagnosed with depression in some sort of way, a lot of people use it as just a term to describe intense sadness or, just being fed up or something along those lines. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody has down days, and I'm not downplaying that at all. I have used that term down days a lot, and I still refer to some of my episodes, my spirals as I call them, as down days, because I don't want to worry anybody else. But depression is so much more than just feeling sad, fed up, or lazy for a few days. So let me just hit you with a couple of definitions so that we can be on the same page as to what depression is. So according to the World Health Organization, depression is characterized by persistent sadness and a lack of interest or pleasure in previously rewarding or enjoyable activities. It can also disturb sleep and appetite. The effects of depression can be long-lasting or recurrent and can dramatically affect a person's ability to function and live a rewarding life. According to the NHS in the UK, depression affects people in different ways and can cause a wide variety of symptoms. They range from lasting feelings of unhappiness and hopelessness to losing interest in the things that you used to enjoy and feel very tearful. Many people with depression also have symptoms of anxiety. Physical symptoms can include feelings such as constantly being tired, sleeping badly, having no appetite or sex drive, and various aches and pains. The symptoms of depression range from mild to severe. At its mildest, you may simply feel persistently low in spirit, while severe depression can make you feel suicidal and that life is no longer worth living. So with this in mind, I understand that life is stressful and everyone gets fed up every now and then. Believe me, I know. But again, and I don't want to downplay any of those scenarios, however, in this video I'm covering my own experiences with depression that I have been diagnosed with since, I think it's about 11 years now, so quite a while. So this might be a bit much to share with everyone, but I did say when I started the channel that I wanted it to be a kind of time capsule for where I'm at and how I'm progressing progressing through life. Um, and depression has been such a big part of my life that I feel like it needs to be included or addressed on the channel. As I said, I've had depression since I was around 15, I think. For context, at this moment, I am 26, nearly 27 in a couple of months. I have no idea what triggered it, and I have a history of asking complex questions since I was young. I distinctly remember asking my mother when I was very young in the hospital one time whether it was normal for you not to feel your brain. So, as you heard me say earlier, or throughout this video, I will use the term spiral. Now, to me, spiral is when my depression hits and drags me down to the lowest depths. It may not be clear to see in all of the ramblings that I'm going to get into in this video, but my depression, as I said, has been a constant companion for about 11 years now. The weeks where I don't post anything online, such as a video on YouTube, a post, or when I'm in one, it can be hard for me to wake up, let alone get out of bed, get dressed, brush my hair, put a smile on, and turn on the camera. The majority of the time, I lack the need or the urge to clean my room or even myself, and I know that sounds gross to a lot of people, but the energy it involves at that time is just not worth it. And don't even get me started on the amount of times I have let my cupboards in the kitchen run dry because I definitely have not had the energy to go and do a food shop. So to get an idea of what I'm talking about, it is currently 6:45 in the evening on Sunday, where I've decided I am now going to go to the shop to do my shopping that I really needed to do on Monday. Yeah, that's depression for you. Now, I have to admit, I am an introvert and I don't know how to communicate well with people. Shocker. This leads to me constantly overthinking and analysing and second guessing what I'm doing and saying in everything that I'm doing, whether that's talking to someone in person, over the phone, through an email, or, planning a YouTube video, so thus the notes that I've got. So you can imagine that school was fun. I was an outcast, and I have to admit I didn't mind being an outcast too much, as it was less stress than trying to fit in with the cliques and the groups that were around. The only downside was that I had to deal with the bullies. And I didn't help myself much when, in order to get them to leave me alone, I growled at them. No words, just growled at them. So as you can imagine, the stress of the bullies, feeling like I don't fit in, having to worry about schoolwork and my future career, because obviously that's a choice you have to make at about 14, and a few family issues, my depression was bad. My sister quite rightly often described me as the typical emo kid, as I dyed my hair black and wore darker colors to try and blend into the background while locking myself in my room to either watch YouTube or read a good book. Now, this may seem a little bit random, but I look at Elsa and Anna in Frozen, and I see a lot of me and my sister in them, as I literally shut her out of my life for the longest time. And to this day, I'm still trying to fix that aspect of our relationship. So other outsiders will probably agree with me that it's easy to make friends with other outsiders and have those friends stick with you for the longest time. One of my current friends has dealt with my shit ever since we were in primary school, I think about age 5 or 6. And for that, I apologize and I'm thankful. I have honestly put her through the ringer, and I am probably the worst friend, but she is one of those friends that, although we don't talk every day, we can always contact each other and say the most random things. I think the conversation we had last night was just proof of that, and she'll know what I mean. I mention this as I accidentally pushed her away for a few years for another friend of mine who I could see was also going through depression. And I thought I could help her out. And I did, and she helped me. But I also formed an unhealthy attachment on my end, as I kept thinking to myself, someone finally gets me and understands what I'm going through, where I'm coming from. Unfortunately, in 2016, the friendship ended badly. Uh, Although we're civil now, it really threw me. The spiral that I was in for that time period was really bad, as the one person that I thought understood me wasn't there anymore. Now, my experience with depression at this point largely resulted in me closing myself off physically and emotionally, listening to all kinds of self deprecating thoughts that were running through my head. Every little negative comment that someone made in regards to myself, whether directly or not, just solidified the thoughts that were going through my head, and the hatred I felt towards myself, proving that I was nothing to my family, to the world. I'm ashamed to admit, but at that point in my life, I had considered ending my life multiple times, and evidently I didn't go through with it, but that was purely because I would have been more of a burden if I had to my family and friends. My only escapes were hiding in my room and going into the worlds of the books that I read. And I would read for days, barely leaving my room to eat or drink anything. I would watch films, TV programs, or YouTube and just lose myself and numb my brain so that I didn't have to think or hear the thoughts that were going through my head. But my personal favorite for a coping mechanism are animals. So is it really a surprise that I went to college for animal care? So my only escapes were hiding away in books where I could go to different worlds and just exist in those worlds, barely leaving my room to eat or drink anything. I would watch a load of films or TV programs or YouTube just so I could numb my brain and not listen to anything that was going on in my head. But the main coping mechanism that I found was animals. I stand by the belief that animals can sense emotions and provide an incredible positivity in your life, whether they're your pets, zoo animals, wildlife, or stray animals you find on the street. I have friends now that are slightly allergic to cats, but back when the kittens were born, they would come over and have cuddle parties or cuddle times, and despite the sniffles and the scratchy eyes, they honestly left with the biggest smile on their faces, even on their darkest days. So is it really that big of a surprise that I went to college for animal care? Honestly, in college I had a great time, and I had such a great time that I stayed there for 4 years. When you go to college, it's like suddenly being transported into a world where there aren't cliques or groups and people are actually nice to each other. I mean, I don't think that back in school that my class would get along enough to pull together and fund a trip out to South Africa, because we found that they wouldn't put the usual trip on for us and our substitute had contacts to a reserve. So yeah, college was great. I honestly think I was in a good place back then, and aside from the usual stresses of the work and my I can't even say the word, my procrastination biting me in the butt, and a few family dramas, nothing really stressed me out. After college, I decided to make the choice to put myself through university in order to specialize in the marine sector. Now, I do not regret specializing. However, it was tough. Not only because of the work, but I had a lot of outside factors happening at the same time as well. The university itself was amazing. I have never met a more accommodating and helpful schooling body throughout all of my education. The staff were all approachable if you needed something, whether it revolved around your university experience or outside factors, and this helped me out immensely. As I made my way to the on site accommodation, I promised myself that this would be the time where I come out of my shell and, actually embrace who I am. This led to a couple of amazing years at uni, and I made so many new friends, some of which I still have today. I went to beach parties, I went out to a club, I made friends with the local bar staff to the point that I ended up being on the local pool team and won trophies for it, may I just say. And stood centimetres away from a wild humpback whale on the uni campus. It was great, and I'd never felt so free. And then came 2019. Now, not only did someone decide to run into me and ruin the car that I had, my job also tried to kill me. Okay, maybe that's a little dramatic, but my need did give way. I was working at a cafe to make ends meet, and it was okay. But one day, and I can barely even think about the incident without cringing, somebody left oil on the floor next to the egg station. Now, to put this in context, the egg station is right next to the door to the kitchen where everybody's running in and out of the whole time. And it was a busy cafe. So they left that oil there, hadn't told anybody it was there. And I turned around to talk to the other staff member that needed help, and my knee dislocated. Now, I will admit I have a history of knee dislocations, but at this point, I hadn't had one in over 8 years, I think, aside from the occasional twitch. But this full-on dislocated my knee, and it had me off of work for a few months. At this point in time, I had moved in with a friend of mine to try and save some money, but it was a third-story flat that had stairs in it. And if anyone has dislocated or injured their knees before, you know the struggles of crutches. So I was in pain. I could hardly move. I wasn't able to work. Winter was coming, and my roommate didn't know how to help me out. Because someone left a little bit of oil on the floor. Because of this, me and my roommate created such an emotional rift between us that we didn't know how to fix, and we ended up basically avoiding each other in the flat and stopped talking to each other. This completely messed me up, as I felt it was all my fault that things happened this way, because I had a weak body, because I couldn't help out around the house, because I couldn't get shopping in, because I was messing up my friendship again, all the while being stuck inside and barely coming out of my room again. Once again, I had thought of ending my life. Luckily, I reached out to someone at the university, and they got me to go through my doctor, and I met an amazing therapist. She has saved my life so many times, and I am so grateful to her. With her help, I managed to sort myself out enough to look at the next steps forward, and once I was able to walk properly again, I moved out of that flat into a caravan by myself. At this point, me and my therapist had weekly calls, sometimes twice a week, just so she could check in on me. And eventually she managed to convince me that I needed the help of medication. I wasn't keen at first, but knew that she was right, as we had tried pretty much everything else that we could think of to tackle this. I still take them today, but I stand by that my best antidepressants are my cats. And then 2020 happened. Now, as I said earlier, I am an introvert, so the whole isolation aspect didn't bother me too much. I loved the emptiness and the regeneration of the world outside when no one was around. But as we all know, the devastation of 2020 hit everybody in the world and has changed the way that we live to this day. Despite the quarantine, I used that year as the year that I was going to strengthen my mind and my body, as I was fed up with having the excuse that I was weak. I went out on daily walks and I did the couch to 5K run, which I completed, by the way. Started meditating, all while still going to therapy. I loved my caravan life, especially when I introduced a certain little fluff ball into my life, and I finally found my balance. Until finances bit me in the butt, sending me in another spiral, and my other group of friends offering me their place to stay with my baby. So once again, I moved in with friends. Can you see a trend here? It was going great. I was having a blast with my friends. Occasionally something would trigger me where I'd have a down week and I wouldn't want to move. But at that point, my friends knew the signs. We all had our issues and we knew this. And we loved each other for them or despite them, depending on how you want to look at it. And I miss my wee Scottish family every day. Around this time, my gran passed away, and that was devastating for a lot of us. And you can imagine when that happened, it was still COVID rules. So we weren't really able to see, well, I wasn't able to see my family because I was in a completely different country at the time. But it was still kind of difficult. Through all these ups and downs, I managed to get my bachelor's and had finally finished uni. And the weight I felt lift off my shoulders was amazing. Despite all the issues I had faced, I had something to show out of it. So the next step was to figure out the next step, I guess. And I switched jobs to working in customer service so that I could save some money. And let me tell you, that is a whole other kettle of fish. But I preferred that job a lot more than working in that cafe. And developed a decent way of interacting with customers with a nice, polite demeanour, which, now that I think about it, probably looked a little bit like umbrage. Oops. Within this time came the kittens. Now, if you guys haven't met the kittens, there are videos on this channel where you can meet all of their cuteness, and I highly recommend that you go and watch them, just for a nice warm feeling in your chest. It's adorable. They brought such a sense of joy into the house and something for me to look forward to as my days had become a little bit monotonous and dull. They kept me on my toes, and every day, no matter how down I was, I could step into that room and feel lighter just watching them. Life was good. However, all good things must come to an end, I guess. And once again, a rift formed between myself and one of my friends, which caused a lot of tension in the house, to the point that the rest of the group and I would actively spend the majority of our time away from the house in order to avoid the negativity. I knew this couldn't last, and it was somehow my fault again, triggering another spiral, so I looked for things to further my career. And that is how I found the internship that I am currently doing. Knowing I had to save as much money as I could, I threw myself into work, causing a stress overload and further tensions to rise, as I just did not want to confront the negativity in that house. This caused even further tension to rise in the house, to the point that things were said and I broke down at work on the phone to my family about how I couldn't take it anymore and I didn't know what else to do. And yes, once again, I was suicidal. Not that my family knew that. Now, I'm probably aware it sounds a bit like a white girl problem, but without disclosing a lot of personal information about the people involved in this story, I can't really tell you what triggered it. But know that I find myself a pretty independent person, and it was bad enough for me to ring up my family who were in another country, and they told me to come back home. So evidently that's what I did. I moved back down to England and worked my butt off, still in customer service, during a heat wave, might I add, and customers get grouchy. Eventually, between myself and my family, I was able to sort things out enough to be able to come over here to do this internship. Now, a lot of people told me, you'll love it over here, or you'll have such a great time. And don't get me wrong, I'm having a good time now, but for the first month or so, I was in the midst of a spiral again. I was in a new country that operated far differently from what I knew. I had no one that I felt safe with to talk to. I didn't know how to get around, and worst of all, I had to leave my cats in the UK. So my biggest aid against the spirals were back across the ocean. There were many times I wanted to just pack my bags and hop on the next flight back to the UK, and as I felt that I was a failure and I wasn't worthy to have this opportunity, but I kept telling myself, you paid to be here and it is a very rare opportunity, so suck it up and stick with it. Which I have, and with weekly updates on the cats and my family's back home, I'm doing a lot better than I was. I know this video might be a lot of weird ramblings from me, but I hope that this video helps somebody out there, as I know it can feel very isolating. If you feel that you're struggling like this or any kind of regard, please feel free to reach out. However, I'm going to be wrapping up this video here. Thank you for sticking with me throughout it all. I know it's a lot. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.